Good afternoon. I hope you're doing well today. Would you join me for a cup of tea? I made it just the way I like it, slightly floral with a touch of honey. And today, as I sit in this quiet little corner of my world, I find myself thinking about something I never quite expected to face this way: silence. Not the peaceful, meditative kind of silence, but the kind that sneaks up on you after a life full of noise. The kind that echoes in the hallway when no one knocks, that hums in your pocket when your phone stays still. The kind of silence that isn't painful. Not at first, anyway. It's just empty. It was a morning like any other. The sun rose like it always did. I made my bed, poured my coffee, sat in the same chair I always do. I glanced at the calendar and realized there was nothing there. No appointments, no errands, no reminders, not even a phone call scheduled, no one to check in on, no one expecting anything from me. And for the first time in a long time, I asked myself, not out of despair, but out of sheer curiosity, do I still have a reason to be here? Have you ever had that thought? Not out of self-pity, not out of a dramatic existential crisis, just a quiet, honest question rising from the stillness of a day where nothing was asked of you. It's strange how we don't notice the scaffolding of our lives until it's taken down. Work, errands, responsibilities, people needing us. They held up the shape of our days. But what happens when the structure fades and you're left with the open space of your own existence? What happens when no one needs a ride, a favor, a casserole? When the house is tidy but no one's coming over? When the only voice you hear all day is your own humming along to a familiar tune? I sat with that question for a long time. Maybe you're sitting with it too. And maybe, just maybe, that question has something to teach us. So let me tell you what I learned. Not all at once, but slowly, gently, like tea steeping. Let's sit a while if you don't mind. The thing is, I didn't always feel this way. There was a time in my life when my days were bursting at the seams. Not a single hour went unused. I used to measure my worth by how much I got done. If I had a long list, I felt valuable. If I was busy, I felt needed. If someone depended on me, I felt alive. Do you remember those days in your life too? When we were working, there was always a meeting, a deadline, a responsibility. When I was still at the office, I used to carry two phones, one for work, one for home. They rang like church bells, summoning me from one task to another. I liked it. I truly did. It meant I mattered. Then came the years of raising children. My wife and I were a team, running on caffeine and calendar alerts. There were lunches to pack, tears to wipe, science projects to supervise, scraped knees to tend to. On weekends, there were birthday parties and grocery runs and endless laundry loads. It was chaos, but it was beautiful. And I think somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that being was the same as doing. If I wasn't productive, I wasn't present. If I wasn't helping, I was fading. When our children left the nest, that rhythm began to stutter. I remember the first weekend after our youngest moved out. I woke up early, expecting to hear footsteps, cereal bowls clinking, doors opening and closing. But the house stayed still. There was nothing to clean up, no one to drive, no one to remind to wear sunscreen. I stood in the kitchen holding a sponge I didn't need to use and thought, now what? I thought retirement would be a reward, a long, peaceful stretch of time to do what I wanted, but I hadn't realized just how tightly I had wrapped my identity around the things I did. I miss being a provider, a fixer, a guide. I missed feeling essential. And one day, I remember this as clearly as I remember my own name. I sat on the edge of the bed and thought, maybe it's time to go quietly. Not in a dramatic sense, not in a way that would worry anyone. Just to step out of the picture, to stop being the extra dish at the table, to stop offering advice that no one asked for, to become gently invisible. Have you ever felt like that? That perhaps if you stopped showing up, the world wouldn't skip a beat? It wasn't that I wanted to disappear out of pain. It was that I didn't think I was making much of a difference anymore. And when you stop making a difference, at least in the way the world used to tell you that you mattered, it's easy to wonder if your time is up. But someone actually, would remind me that I was wrong. That would come later. Right then, though, I believed I had outlived my usefulness. And yet, the sun kept rising. My feet kept carrying me into the kitchen. My hands still knew how to steep tea just right. Something in me refused to vanish, even when I thought I should. I think that part of me, that quiet resistance, was trying to teach me a new truth. But at the time, I was still measuring my life in achievements I could no longer stack. Still defining my presence by roles I no longer filled. Still believing I had to do something to be someone. Looking back, that belief was the heaviest burden I carried, and in time I would learn to put it down. There's a quiet kind of heartbreak that happens not when someone forgets something important to you, but when everyone does. It was my birthday. I don't need a parade. Haven't needed one in decades. I'm not talking about streamers or surprise parties or gift cards from people who barely remember my name. But still, I thought maybe there'd be a call. Maybe someone would stop by with a pastry from the bakery I like, or maybe a card tucked into the mailbox, a message on the fridge, a simple happy birthday, Dad. But the day came and went like any other. The morning began the same way it always did. Tea, slippers, silence. I looked at the calendar and saw the dates circled in my own handwriting, a small habit I've kept since I was a teenager. Circle the day. Make it a little sacred, even if no one else does. The phone didn't ring, no email, no knock at the door, not even one of those automated messages from the pharmacy. And you know what the strangest part was? I didn't feel sad right away. I just sat there, still, unmoved. Like part of me had always known this would happen someday, that there would be a year when my name slipped from the minds of the people I once raised, worked alongside, laughed with. A year when the world just forgot. I made myself a small breakfast, toast and butter, half an orange. And I told myself, you're okay. You're a grown man. It's just another Wednesday. But sometime after noon, the quiet began to ache. Not sharply, not even deeply, just in that dull, hollow place where your voice echoes back at you when no one else answers. And for a moment I thought, maybe this is it now. Maybe I've turned that corner, the one where you're more memory than presence, more past than participant. I didn't cry. I don't think I even frowned. I just sat in my old recliner, hands resting on my belly, looking out at the backyard like it was trying to comfort me. And then, without warning, the door burst open. It was my granddaughter, still in her school clothes, cheeks pink from running, a backpack barely hanging on one shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just ran to me arms wide and threw herself into my lap like I was the sun and she hadn't seen light in days. No happy birthday, no gift bag, no special occasion. Just a hug, a big, warm, wriggly, honest hug. I wrapped my arms around her, surprised, and suddenly aware of something I hadn't realized until that very moment. She didn't know it was my birthday. She didn't come because it was marked on a calendar. She came because I was here, and that was enough. She didn't need me to teach a lesson, or fix a toy, or tell a story. She didn't even need a reason. She just wanted to be close. And her closeness, that spontaneous expression of love, was a kind of recognition that no birthday song could offer. I held her close for a long time, maybe longer than usual, long enough for her to squirm and giggle and say, "Grandpa, you're squishing me." And I laughed, maybe for the first time all day. In that moment, I realized something I'd never quite understood. You don't have to be celebrated to matter. You don't have to be remembered to be needed. Sometimes just sitting there, still breathing, still open, still loving, is all the invitation the world needs to come back to you. Her hug said, "You're here." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it meant something. Not because it was my birthday, not because I had done anything special, but simply because I was. There's an old apricot tree in my yard. It's been there longer than most of the houses on this street. My wife and I planted it when the children were still small, hoping one day they'd climb its branches or eat its fruit in the summer sun. They did for a while. But like most trees and most people, it didn't ask for much. Just a bit of water when the sky forgot how to rain. A little care when the wind tried to break its limbs. And then year after year it stood, quiet, steady, unnoticed. I never paid much attention to that tree until everything else in my life slowed down. Funny, isn't it? When you're busy, trees are just background. But when the phone stops ringing, and the calendar empties, and the noise of the world fades, you start to see things differently. I began to watch it. Each morning I'd take my tea out to the porch and sit with the tree. I know how that sounds, as though I was making it a companion, but in truth, it was the tree that made me its companion. It didn't perform. It didn't bloom just because I was watching. Some days it looked plain, bare, old. Other days, especially in spring, it would unfurl a small miracle, a cluster of pale blossoms catching the early light. No trumpet, no applause, just life, continuing. And something in me softened. I started to see the tree not as decoration, but as teacher. It never once rushed, never questioned its purpose. It never asked if it was being useful, it simply was. There were days I sat with it and thought of all the ways I used to measure my own worth. How many hours I worked, how much money I brought in, how many people I could help. But the tree didn't measure itself by fruit alone. There were seasons it gave nothing but shade. There were winters when it stood leafless, exposed, brittle. And yet it was still the tree, still whole, still worthy. I began to wonder if maybe I could live like that too, to stop pushing myself to be more than this moment, to stop apologizing for my slower pace, my quieter presence, my softer voice. Have you ever watched something grow without asking why it exists? Have you ever loved something just because it was there? That tree became my morning sermon. Not in words, of course, but in posture, in patience. I'd watch it sway with the wind and think, maybe I don't need to stand tall all the time. Maybe bending is part of surviving. I'd watch the birds land and take off and realize, even when no one notices, I'm part of something. A landscape, a rhythm, a life still unfolding. One day a neighbor walked by and asked, "You okay?" sitting out here every morning like that?" And I smiled. "I'm learning," I said. "Learning what?" he asked. I looked at the tree. "To be here," I replied, because that was it. I had spent so many years doing, I had forgotten how to be. But the tree reminded me, you don't have to bloom every day. You don't have to bear fruit in every season. You don't have to be noticed to be necessary. You just have to keep standing, rooted, open, present. And over time, that's exactly what I learned to do, just like the tree. One evening, not too long ago, I heard a sound I hadn't heard in quite a while. Quiet crying. It was soft, muffled, coming from the kitchen. At first, I thought maybe the kettle was whistling in a strange way. But then I heard it again, that unmistakable tremble in a breath that's trying not to be noticed. It was my daughter. She was standing at the sink, her back to me. The kitchen light cast a golden pool around her, but her shoulders were hunched in that particular way. The way people stand when they're holding in too much for too long. She didn't hear me walk in, and I didn't say anything. Not right away. I didn't ask her what was wrong. I didn't try to offer solutions or play the wise old father. I just sat down at the kitchen table, quietly. She turned slightly, noticed me, and gave a small shake of her head, like she didn't want to talk about it. So I nodded and stayed. I folded my hands, took a breath, looked out the window the way I always do. And I waited. 5 minutes went by, then 10. The only sound was the slow drip from the tap and the hum of the refrigerator. Finally, with a sigh, the kind of sigh that empties a person, she sat down across from me. Still no words, and then she whispered, "I didn't know what to do, but when I saw you there, I felt like I could breathe again." That moment stayed with me for days, because I hadn't done anything. No wisdom, no advice, no performance. I was just there, and somehow that was enough. Have you ever had someone sit beside you without asking questions? Without fixing anything? Just being with you quietly? There's something sacred in that. Something we forget in our rush to solve, explain, improve. We think love must speak loudly, in gestures, in answers, in action. But love, I've come to believe, is often silent. It sits next to sorrow without flinching. It doesn't need to fill the space. It honors the space. That night in the kitchen taught me something I wish I had learned earlier in life. My presence, even now, quiet, older, slower, is still deeply needed. Not for what I can provide, not for what I can say, but for what I am. And maybe that's the kind of presence we're all hungry for. Someone who won't walk away when we're not okay. Someone who stays, even when the words won't come. That was the beginning of something new in my heart. I stopped measuring my worth by the noise I could make, and I started noticing the spaces I could gently occupy. The ones where people don't need a hero, just a hand nearby, a chair pulled out, a warm glance, a nod that says, "I see you. I'm here." My granddaughter noticed it too. One afternoon, she came into the living room with a puzzle. She didn't say anything, just dumped the pieces onto the rug and sat cross-legged beside me. I didn't ask if she needed help. She didn't ask for it, but after a while I picked up a piece and placed it where I thought it might go. She didn't even look up. She just smiled almost to herself and kept working. We didn't say a word for the next 40 minutes. And when we finished, she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I like doing nothing with you." Nothing, and yet everything. Because in those moments, the quiet ones, the ordinary ones, we meet one another without armor. without pretense, without needing to impress or instruct. We're simply together. And that, I've come to believe, is the most powerful kind of being there is. There's a drawer in my bedroom filled with little reminders that I've changed. Old reading glasses I no longer wear. Pills I have to take every morning, lined up like tiny guards beside my toothbrush. A small notepad I keep by my bed now, just in case I forget something I meant to remember. And I do forget, more than I used to. Names take a second longer. Stories spill out in the wrong order. I walk into rooms and stop, staring at the walls, trying to remember why I came in. There was a time when all of this scared me. I thought, is this the beginning of the end? I'd get frustrated with myself, embarrassed, angry even. I'd hear myself tell the same story twice at dinner and want to shrink into the floor. I'd fumble with buttons or stand too long trying to tie my shoes, and I'd mutter under my breath, ashamed at how long simple things now took. I started apologizing a lot. I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm sorry, I already said that, didn't I? I'm sorry, I'm slow today. Have you ever done that? Apologized for the way time has changed you? As if aging is something to feel guilty about. But one evening, something shifted. It was after dinner. I had just told a story I was sure I told before, about the time our dog got loose at the 4th of July barbecue and stole someone's burger right off their plate. I laughed at the memory, not realizing I'd already told it earlier that week. But before I could apologize, my granddaughter leaned in and said, "I love that story, Grandpa, even if you tell it every day." I stopped. She meant it. She didn't roll her eyes, didn't sigh. She smiled, that warm, cheeky, forgiving smile only a child can offer without trying. And in that moment, something gentle broke open inside me. I realized I didn't need to be sharp to be cherished. I didn't need to be quick or witty or even right all the time. I just needed to be me, even if that me was a little slower now. Even if I repeated myself, even if I forgot the punchline halfway through a joke. They weren't keeping me around because I was entertaining. They were keeping me around because they loved me, not for what I do, but for who I am. That's when I stopped apologizing. Not completely. Old habits linger. But I started catching myself. When I'd forget a word, I'd laugh. When I'd tell a story twice, I'd say, "Well, it must be a good one." And instead of shrinking, I started showing up. Just as I was. Bent a little more at the knees. Hair thinner. Voice softer. Steps slower. But still me. Still loving. Still listening. Still learning. There's a kind of grace in letting yourself be fully human. Imperfect. Unpolished. Real. We spend so much of our lives trying to be good enough, smart enough, fast enough, strong enough. But what if enough was never about doing? What if it was about being? Just being. Open, honest, present. I'm not who I was at 40. I'm not even who I was last year. But I'm still here. And if there's one thing I've come to know deep in my bones, it's this. Love doesn't fade because your memory does. You don't stop mattering because your joints ache or your hands tremble. And joy doesn't require perfection. Sometimes my granddaughter still asks me to tell that story. The one about the dog and the barbecue. She doesn't care that I've told it before. She just likes the way I laugh when I get to the part where the dog ran off with the burger. And I like the way she laughs too. That shared laughter, that moment is more than memory. It's belonging. It's presence. And that, my friend, is everything. The house creaks more than it used to. Maybe it's the woods settling deeper into the earth. Maybe it's just that I've grown quiet enough to finally hear it. I sit by the window most mornings now. The light spills in just right, catching the rim of my mug, the faded lines on my hands, the dust that dances like it remembers something. Sometimes I wonder, if someone walked past my house, would they know someone lives here? The yard is still trimmed, though slower than before. The mailbox still opens and closes. The curtains are drawn back every morning, signs of life, gentle ones. And me, I'm still here. I don't run anymore. I don't climb ladders or fix roofs or stay up past midnight trying to be the hero in someone's story. But I rise with the sun. I take my medicine. I water the plants. I listen when someone speaks. I laugh when it feels right. I cry when it moves me. And that is living. I used to think I needed to be more than that, to produce, to contribute, to improve, always. But I've come to learn that being alive, truly, quietly, deeply alive, is not about what you do. It's about what you notice. Like the way the cat curls beside your chair without needing permission. Or how a robin returns to the same branch, year after year. It's in the way your breath slows when you sip warm tea, and how the steam fogs your glasses, and how you smile at the ridiculousness of it. There's a holiness in the ordinary. I see it now. In the way my granddaughter ties her shoes beside me. In the sound of the wind brushing the curtains just so. In the feel of my own heartbeat, slow but steady. I used to ask myself, why am I still here? But now I ask something different. I ask, what can I receive today simply by being here? Because being here is the gift. It's the gift I once overlooked. It's the gift that holds all others. I don't need applause. I don't need to be needed the way I once was. I just need to be. And being, sitting in this old chair, greeting the morning light, listening to the house sigh and settle, is enough. Because when someone knocks on my door, I answer. When someone sits across from me, I listen. When someone wraps their arms around me, I don't need to ask why. I'm still part of this story, still written on these walls, still named in quiet prayers, still felt in every room I've loved someone in. And even when the world forgets to notice, even when no one says it out loud, I carry the quiet truth like a stone in my pocket. I'm still here, still breathing, still feeling, still loving, and that is enough. Thank you for sitting with me this long, for sharing this quiet cup of time. I didn't think when I first began speaking today that I'd feel this seen, this held, by the simple act of telling you my story. But here we are, two people, perhaps separated by cities, maybe even decades, yet connected by something gentle and enduring. The human need to feel that we still belong, that we still matter, even, especially when we are no longer running, fixing, proving, achieving, just here, still in this world, still in this breath, still in this moment. You know, when I was younger, I thought presence meant making an impression. I thought to matter I had to shine, to be heard, to be exceptional. But I've come to realize that some of the most powerful presences in life are the quietest. The chair in the corner that always welcomes you. The tree that's been outside your window your entire life. The person who says nothing yet listens with their whole heart. And maybe, just maybe, that's what we become as we grow older. We become the stillness others lean into, the soft place others come home to, the steady rhythm in a world that's always rushing. So I say again, as I said when we began, I'm still here, not doing great things, not fixing the world, not saving anyone. Just here. And I hope you know, if you're still here too, that is already more than enough. Your being matters. Your breath is a kind of prayer. Your presence is a quiet light. So before we end this little tea time together, may I leave you with a question? Not one that demands an answer, but one that might linger a while, the way good questions do. Have you forgotten that just by being here, you are already a gift to this world? Let that sit with you. Let it soften the edges of your day. And when the phone doesn't ring, or the door doesn't knock, or the world moves too fast to notice, remember you are still here. And that truly is enough. Until next time, my friend, may your days be gentle, your tea warm, and your heart full. Take care.